Hi guys. So I feel like this is a subject I should have touched on at the beginning of the summer and not near the end of the summer. But hey, it's better late than never, right? So school has started here for the kids. So their summer is over, poor kids. But we're still in the middle of August, so this is still a valid subject. And really, it's a valid subject all year, but especially more so in the hot summer months. And that is water bottles versus water bowls for your bunnies. A lot of people do use water bottles. And I'm not going to say that there's anything wrong with that, but you do run the risk of them not getting enough water, especially during the hot summer months. Surprisingly, and I never would have guessed this, years ago when I didn't know as much about rabbits, but they drink about as much water as dogs and cats do. And I don't know anybody who would dream of providing water to their dog or their cat in one of those little water bottles. For one, you have to be on top of making sure that thing is full. There is a chance of it malfunctioning, and they're just not getting enough water at one time out of that little spout. So, yeah, water bottles versus water bowls is the subject today. So, water bowls versus water bottles. I always used water bottles. Well, no, I meant bowls for my rabbits. Now, I did have a water bottle in the cage when I had my first rabbit. He was only in the cage when I wasn't home and at night. So I had a water bottle in there for him for that time. But when he was free reign around the house, he had a water bowl. And I did switch out the water bottle for a bowl in his cage as well at a later time, because when I was working 8 hours a day, I didn't want him to rely on getting his water intake from the bottle. But like I mentioned at the beginning, there is a possibility of water bottles getting clogged up, malfunctioning. The ball won't turn. If the ball doesn't turn, they can't get the water out. And then they just don't get a high volume of water. I went completely blank. They don't get a high volume of water when they're drinking in the first place. So they're going to have to be working at that. If they're thirsty, they're going to be working at that forever to get the amount of water that they need. So because I have noticed, I have 2 water bowls in with Milo and Hera. And Milo will sit there and just chug and chug and chug. Like his face will be in that bowl for 2 minutes. And I can't imagine if he's that thirsty drinking out of that and getting more water that way, what he'd have to do to get the amount of water that he's getting from that bowl from a water bottle. And I have 2, they're a good size bowl. And I have 2 of them in there since I have 2 bunnies. I have 2 of them in there. And I have to refill those every other day. Sometimes I do it every day just to, their water doesn't get real dirty. I mean, might get hair floating in it, if anything. But it's away from their hay and things like that. So they don't get crap all floating in it. So it stays fairly clean. So usually it's every other day that I fill them, but I'll notice one getting low and the other one is a little higher. They'll kind of focus on one bowl before they start on the other. If one of them is really low, yet the other one is full, I'll still just fill the one. But typically every other day I'll do both. And yeah, it's like clockwork every other day, because that is how much water they drink. They have small mouths, they have small tongues, but they go through a lot of water. I mean, they're constantly eating, and I don't want them to have a shortage of water. I don't want them to dehydrate. They can overheat very easily, especially in hot summer months. I want to make sure that that water is there for them. I also have wrapped frozen water bottles and put them in, like, full water bottles, human drinking water bottles, frozen, wrapped up, and put in there like a little mini AC system. They can snuggle up next to it to cool off. But definitely make sure that they have their access to a lot of water. And I personally don't feel like water bottles cut it. So that's just my opinion on that. And just, based on research and, how water bottles can malfunction, and you certainly don't want them to malfunction when you're not home, because then while you're not home, they're not getting the water that they need. A lot of people will say, well, my rabbit tips the bowl over. And if you put a regular bowl in there, yes, they will. They like to pick things up and toss them. They will tip the water over. So you need to get a no spill. I spent $9 per bowl that they have, and I got them from Uncle Bill's, I believe. I'm sure you can find them other places, other pet stores, but mine was at my local Uncle Bill's pet store. And they were $9 a piece. They were not cheap bowls, but they cannot tip these. They're curved in, they're plastic, they're flat on the bottom, and they just curl right over in. And in fact, when you go to dump it out, you have to kind of slosh it around to get all the water out, because it's that good. And because of its shape, they don't have anything that they can grab onto to tip it over. So definitely going the bowl way, you need to get non-spill, so that they can't tip them over. And mine are unable to tip them over. They have not done it. I used to have it up on a riser, like I had the coffee table in there before, so that he can jump on top and get into the top kennel, which I've since removed. But I had put the water on the lower shelf, and he would push it off. Now, that's different than, tipping it over. It was a wooden surface. He was able to push it off. So at that point, I knew I had to change it up. So yeah, definitely non-spill. But when it comes to water bottles, I don't feel like those two bowls that I refill every other day hold way more water than a water bottle would. I mean, you'd have to get a very ginormous water bottle to hold the capacity of water that they drink. And I just don't think that they would get it as quickly into their systems from a water bottle as they would from a water bowl. So that is my take on that. I'm not going to be upset if people don't want to use bowls. It is your preference. But just my take on it is that if you want to do what is best for your bunny, make sure that they get as much water as they need, a water bowl is best. If you're willing to make sure that those bottles are big enough and that they're not going to malfunction and that they're constantly topped off, that's fine. You're welcome to do that. I personally am too busy to make sure that several times a day I'm checking on their water and making sure that it's working properly. So I just stick with the bowls. And they work perfectly. Some people will say, well, the bowl it's too big for the space. Honestly, they need a bigger space. They're not in a big enough space if a water bowl is too big to fit in it. One rabbit should typically be in a 2x4 space anyway. That's a minimum requirement. A lot of people will keep them in something smaller, And, you know, I had a smaller cage with my first bunny, but again, he was only in it at night, and when I wasn't home the rest of the time, he was free range around the house. So his cage size was not as big of an issue. If it is something that you are going to be having your bunny in all the time, typically, if it is not 2x4, it is too small. So I would definitely look into upgrading the space so that you can provide what they need. They need room for their hay rack. They need room for a water bowl. They need room for toys. Yeah, a 2x4 is the minimum space for one rabbit. And in fact, before I got Hera, Milo was in a 4x4 space. And, you know, together they're in a 4x6 because I added on dog kennels. If they cannot hop multiple times across, then it is too small. And definitely, if you're saying, I can't put in a water bowl, the space isn't big enough, it is definitely too small. So definitely look into that if you've got bunnies. And yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because it has been a hot summer. And I noticed that they go through a buttload of water. So it was just, you know, laying on my heart that, you know, I know people that use water bottles. And, you know, when it is hot out, they're going to drink more, just like anybody drinks more when they're hot. So they just need to have enough provided to them so that they can be healthy and happy. Anyway, I have to get ready for work, so I just wanted to touch on that with you guys. And I hope everybody has a great day.